Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 379. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Stacy. That is at StacyPen89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing on this, rainy Tuesday morning?
A little under weather, so bear with me today, folks. But yeah, other than that, not too bad.
Well, unfortunate to hear, but we will get through it. And before we get started, to make a few announcements. The first being that Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strict Outlet on Instagram. We're posting all kinds of new content on there. We also have a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, if not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That would be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which is available on our website at www.thestrict.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you also get access to the Strickland Discord, where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gives you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave and even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, our newest podcast. That is, you guessed it, about the NFL that is hosted by Constantine Metricos. There are further tiers. There's the $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. There's comes with a variety of additional benefits, listening to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without Bet Online. Bet Online continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, including pro and college hoops throughout the year. With up-to-the-minute odds, stats, and trends, you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting contests and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to Bet Online today to become part of the team. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online. The game starts here. We've also got a great new sponsor. I love betting my friends and betting them on anything, sports games. Who's fast? That's what Cut allows me to do. The Cut app is a peer-to-peer social betting platform that's legal in 40-plus states. Cut has customizable odds, tracking capabilities, and an entire social network with group chats, user profiles, and rewards. All payments, no need for Venmo. What can we bet on? Well, I could bet Stacy on who will be healthiest, fastest. And I will say this. I like his odds better than I like OG Anunoby's or Julius Randle's, but hopefully not better than Jalen Brunson's, who potentially could play as soon as tonight against the Hawks. Let's see what happens. Use our promo code BELIEVE-NICKS, BLEAV NICKS, for a 10% welcome deposit bonus. Don't forget that promo code. Again, BELIEVE-NICKS, BLEAV NICKS. Cut. Put your money where your mouth is. All right. Now, setting aside all the consumer bullshit I have to push there. The Knicks won a fairly epic game on Sunday night against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They won 107-98, and Jalen Brunson went out of the game 47 seconds in, hurt his knee, I believe, knee contusion, whatever the hell it was. I don't know. I mean, I guess just generally speaking, what are your thoughts just on that game? Because I think in a lot of ways, a lot of people have said it's the Knicks' best win of the season. I'm not sure I'm fully there, but I know in some ways it did have it did echo some of the feelings of the Kurt Thomas Utah game in 2012-13. I thought it was very meaningful for the Knicks to win that game. I think it spoke a lot about the culture they have built, which is a testament to the job, whatever criticisms we have, the very, very good job, excellent job in a lot of ways that Tom Thibodeau has done. What were your thoughts just on everything about that game?
Yeah, I mean, once Brunson goes down, even without Mitchell playing, this has been one of the hottest teams in the league. It is a team that every time they see the Knicks, unceremoniously beat them in 5 games. They're going to get their best shot. And already missing. They were missing 4 starters. They're missing their 2 best players. They were missing their best defender. They were missing their 2 best defenders, right? So with all of that happening, to show up the way they did, and win convincingly. I don't think you and I have both been critical of Josh Hart. I think the things I think we were critical of, I think he's been doing a better job in picking his spots, both pushing the ball in the half in transition and creating in the half. But 19 rebounds at 6'4". I'm not sure how many guys I've seen do something like that. I think there's a stat. He has like 29 or 30 rebounds over the last 2 games, or whatever his combined rebounds are. No guard has ever done it. And the only other 4 guys were like really good bigs, like Hall of Famers. And yeah, I mean, this is what you talk about with Thibs' culture. And there are upsides and downsides. People are going to say, you play your guys too many minutes. You try to win every game, but in the playoffs, you don't play on. Fine, but it matters because this Knicks team in reality could be in the play-in right now. Other teams have, Miami's surging. Philadelphia has been reasonably holding up well, even without Embiid. Orlando has been playing really well. This is a team that could have let go of the rope long ago. They haven't even really had a game where they mailed it in, like we talked about this last time. They are going to bring it every night, and they need that right now. They don't have the luxury of, maybe at full strength, when they were rattling off wins, you could see, you lose focus for a game, but they need that to bring it every night. It's not as easy as people just say you must be, just the cheerleader not a cheerleader, but like, I think people undervalue that. But I think it matters a lot. And I think Josh Hart exemplifies it more than maybe anyone else on this team, but it isn't just him. It's guys being asked to do whatever it is. You want Josh Hart to play point guard? We didn't for most of the season, but he figured out how to be effective in that role. You want Dante DiVincenzo to turn into prime Reggie Miller? Sorry, guys. That was just the first name that popped into mind.
Calm down. Relax.
Yeah, Reggie wasn't that good, I know. But
Reggie Miller famously went 3 of 18 in an elimination game.
Right. So, and Dante would never. And you need Deuce
even if
McBride.
he did, he would do it in a very wholesome way.
Deuce McBride. Well, he has been compared to another guy who went 3 for 19 in elimination game in a good way.
Much more wholesome.
Deuce is, Deuce is another guy, right? So, is it fun to watch this team as much as it was a couple months ago? No, but damn, man, it's like some Disney movie shit.
I don't know about all that. Let's
Disney movie shit to win with after Brunson goes down, after OG's.
I'm asking an honest question. Like, were you that surprised though? Like, honestly, I wasn't. Like, look, in the moment, I'm not gonna lie to you, because me and Luca did the playback, so we were on during the game. We're talking about it during the game. We're reacting live to the Brunson injury, and of course, obviously, Brunson gets hurt. You're almost like, fuck this game. I don't care what happens. Just please, everybody, make it through alive, and please let Brunson be, not a serious injury. But just in the context of that one game, if we had known Brunson was ruled out to start the game, right? Like, just say before the game, the Knicks say, oh yeah, Brunson's fucking, whatever, for whatever reason he's ruled out, and we know that Mitchell was out for the Cavs. I don't think I'd have been that surprised they lost, or that they won. Sorry, that the Knicks won. Like, I don't think it was that shocking of a result, and that's kind of why, like, I get why. Like, I 100% agree with the sentiment. Like, it speaks a ton to the culture the Knicks have built under Tom Thibodeau. But I don't think it's that surprising of a result. I really don't. Like, I think it's almost, it's a extremely Tibbs team type of result, right? Where you're just like, fuck it, like, not fuck it, but like, it's the type of game that you almost associate with Tibbs teams winning. Shorthanded, adversity hits, guys have to grind it out for extended minutes. Like, it is it's a very, very Tibbsy type of game to win.
Yeah, so I wouldn't
And
say I was shocked by it, but I will say this: it means something that the Cavs. Would you say the Cavs are the best player overall? Darius Garland would be considered the best player that played in that
he'd
game,
be
right?
considered the best player. I agree with that.
By most. I would argue that Jared Allen would be considered the second best player, although I think the center on the other side has a pretty good argument. But as much as it's fun,
Jericho Sims is definitely better than Jared Allen.
I think most people would say the third best player was Evan Mobley. So the point is, like, was it a tail event, if you will? No, but it was improbable, especially since what has been happening when they've been shorthanded is they play hard for a half. And then in the second half, that was probably the bigger worry than talent, to be honest. It's that you're gonna have to play again, Hart 45 minutes, DiVincenzo 39. This is not to get on Thibs. What I'm saying is because they've had no choice but to do that. You've seen those guys wear down a little bit, particularly DiVincenzo late in games when he's been shooting these crazy shots off the dribble all game, and like the legs are gone, right? So I do think like in that sense, like it definitely was unexpected. I'll just put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with a lot of that. The part of this game, honestly, like, look, Josh Hart, I want to say this, he was amazing. One of his great Knicks games so far in his relatively short Knicks career. Dante DiVincenzo, awesome, huge first and third quarters. I mean, just kind of buoyed the Knicks offense in ways that continue to surprise, right? Quite frankly, like it's pretty wild how good he has been. You got great center play overall, and each of those guys, Hartenstein, Precious, Jericho Sims, all of them contributed to the win. Boyan was awesome. His mid-range scoring during the second quarter, especially, was huge. In terms of just giving the Knicks enough scoring, and the fact, look, I think he was, I want to say he was 6 of 15, or no, sorry, I think he was 8 of 13 or 8 of 15 from the field. He was 1 of 6 from 3. He scored 20 points still. It's an efficient 20 points, even without being hot from 3. He actually airballed a fucking wide open 3 in the fourth quarter that was super annoying. I'm like, dude, this is like the most wide open corner 3 you're ever going to get. Like, what the fuck? But whatever. He helped the Knicks a lot in this game. And he had a huge 4-point play. At a time, I believe Cleveland had cut the lead to 3 when he connects on a 4-point play. So he came up big, but in a lot of ways, to me, this was look, actually, it's pretty funny. A year ago to this day was the day that Emmanuel Quickley, as a Knick, shit on the Boston Celtics at Boston Garden when Jalen Brunson missed the game. And I'm not going to call what Deuce McBride did to Cleveland exactly the same, but it is nice that nearly a year to the day, Deuce McBride, it wasn't the same thing, but it felt like a little bit of a coming out party for Deuce McBride. And I hope that this is a kind of a launching pad for him to, he's obviously been in the Knicks rotation since the OG Anunoby trade, but I do hope this is a bit of a launching pad for him to play and not just play, but play with more confidence and be more of a factor offensively, as in terms of being a creator. Because I think we've seen glimpses of what he's capable of. I actually think, I believe we talked about this after the Pelicans game last week, where I was saying that I feel like he's close. Like he's showing more burst ability to break guys down off the dribble. He's just got to figure out what he's going to do once he's kind of at the rim in that 5 to 7 feet area. But he's doing it more, and he's taking
Evan Mobley
mid-range.
couldn't figure out. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that
motherfucker is still on the ground right now.
Yeah, but I mean that kind of speaks to what I'm talking about, though, where it's like I don't even think he would attempt that, a month ago or even a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure. But in this game, like, he showed more willingness to try to create off the bounce. Again, like when he gets into that, 7-8 feet to the rim and less, like he's still got to figure out a plan and how to attack in those ranges. But you're seeing him be more comfortable, get into the paint, penetrate, and try to make plays at least. It's not always beautiful, it's not always great, but he played the final 47 minutes and 13 seconds of this game. And it just in so many ways reminds me of the type of things and performances that made Quickly such an integral part of this team when he was here. And it feels like Deuce is getting closer and closer. I don't want to say approximating because they're separate players, but like he's getting closer to kind of being the type of player and the level of player where even when Brunson is out, where is he Jalen Brunson? No, but he can give you performances that give you a chance. And I don't know. I was just really, really impressed with this performance against Cleveland on Sunday. And I thought, offensively, obviously everything I just said stands, but like defensively, he did a fantastic job on Darius Garland. I thought he was awesome in this game. And Darius Garland actually hit like a bunch of he hit like 2 or 3 step back threes on Deuce that, you can't do anything about those. There's great shots, but like that's basically what he had to live on. I don't think he got a single shot at the rim in this game on McBride. And yeah, I was just really, really impressed with Deuce. And it also just speaks to, a lot of people think Thibs is a bad development coach. I've never thought that. I think Thibs is a really good development coach. And you see a performance like this from Deuce, and it's kind of been slowly building to this. You know what I mean? Like, obviously he's been in the rotation, but you're getting more and more of these type of glimpses into full performances from him. And it speaks to, his ability, Tibbs' ability to get guys prepared and keep them engaged and keep them motivated, even when they're not playing. And, again, like credit to Deuce, credit to Tibbs. But yeah, I just thought this was really, really impressive. A really, really impressive game for Deuce. And I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been playing really well. We saw earlier in the season, he even when he played with the bench, even when he played with Randall, he would really be passive, right? Beyond the fact that he obviously struggled and wasn't comfortable going to the rim, he just wouldn't even attempt it. Whereas you're seeing him play with a little bit of pace now, right? You're seeing I've seen some instances of Chris Pauling, right? Trying to put the defender in jail, keeping his dribble alive in the paint, those kind of things. I don't think this will ever be a high level point guard. I don't think he has the ceiling on offense as Quickly. I will say this though. What really changed when Brunson missed time or Quickly really had to play starters minutes with Randall is he figured out he had to stop deferring all the time. That doesn't mean you don't. I mean, Randall is the guy, right, in that situation. And I think where I'm most encouraged is if Deuce is in the rotation, which I think he should be, over Burks. We'll see what happens with Shake.
Please, God, over Burks.
Yeah, I mean, well,
the only guy, by the way, if you notice, the one guy I did not shout out for his performance against Cleveland. Jesus Christ, that was like whatever. We don't need to talk about. We don't need to soil the spirit of this pod by discussing Alec Burks right now.
If that happens and then you stagger Randall with the bench, I think now he'll look a lot better as that second guy. Whereas early in the season when we tried that and it wasn't Quickly or it was just Deuce, right? He wasn't able to provide that second punch. And that's what happened last year. Quickly figured that out and looked a lot better next to Randall, even when Brunson came back. And yeah, I mean, to your point about player development, it's also the kind of guys they target. And when even guys who have great work ethics, it's the level of sacrifice that they demand. I'm sure Deuce felt at times like there was 100-pound weight on his chest. And he wasn't getting opportunity, right? Every time he shot the ball, because he had the quick hook a lot of times. But Deuce, I mean, I think what exemplifies is that last year we barely got to play, They throw him in the second quarter. Oh, is it game 3 or game 4? It was game 4. They throw him in the second quarter against Donovan Mitchell. He was
This is a really good
what he did to
matchup for
Garland.
him. This is a really good matchup for him.
He just destroyed him, though. I mean, it was. If you had told me that one of these guys is a second-year player, and the other guy is an All-NBA caliber player who's like a freak athlete, it looked like the opposite of what it was, right? So I thought that I mean, everyone, like, you can, I mean, you look at this whole team, and everyone has come through some kind of adversity. It feels like, certainly the core guys. Hartenstein didn't know if it was going to work out. He was a second round pick. He's been in the G League, right? Hartenstein was in the G League. Hartenstein's been in the G League. Precious, like, he looked at as a throw-in. I mean, the Raptors fans said some pretty fucked up stuff about him, to say the least, when he was traded here. Hart obviously has had his up struggles, but it's just with injuries, with rounding out his game, figuring out how to be kind of make it as an unorthodox player in some ways. DiVincenzo's been hurt. Brunson, we know he's constantly been underrated and underestimated even now. Randall had the broken leg his rookie year. I mean, we have joked about the roller coaster, but the fact that he's navigated that roller coaster, and we'll see what happens when he comes back, that's impressive. So the whole team just welcomes adversity, and it pushes them to another level. And Thibs is a big part of that, but it's also the character of the guys. And I think the last thing I'll say is, it can be tough to find, even when you have talent on the floor, it can be tough to find a front office that is maybe aligned with the coach in terms of how to use that talent. Or even if you have talent on the floor, it can be maybe the coach is not aligned with the front office on how talented they are. And then, of course, there's the identity and the strategy, and there's so many things. Right now, I think you're seeing very much full alignment between the character and the identity of this team, its coach, and what the front office wants it to be. And that's why they're able to weather all these injuries, because you can't really, if you have that, you're gonna it'll make things easier. And if you don't have that, you could have full health and you're gonna struggle. So
yeah, no. Again, like, I just think this speaks so much to the culture that Thibs has helped cultivate. And obviously, look, the front office has contributed as well. They've drafted players, traded for players, acquired players, and free agency. This is a roster now. I believe the only player that's a holdover, the only two players that are holdovers from when Leon and company kind of took over are Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson at this point. Everybody else is players they've acquired in one way or the other. And I mean, I would guess, that most Knicks fans would agree with me that this is the most talented and versatile roster the Knicks have had since, I don't know. Personally, to me, this is a better roster than they had in 2012-13. It's probably the best roster they've had since 99.
It's certainly deeper than 2013. I assume you think Brunson is better than Randall. I'm sorry, Melo. Ooh, well, it wouldn't be a chuckle for everyone. But a
lot of people are stupid about Carmelo Anthony, so that's true.
Well, I'll say this: I think Melo's overall at his peak been better, and he's had a longer established success. No, not Brunson. I'm not talking about Brunson. I'm talking about what Randall's doing right now. Like, we take it for granted.
Randall versus Melo, you're talking.
Yeah,
about.
like a double machine who's,
at least as far as his time in New York. Yeah,
I think Melo had better vision as a passer, but Randall's more willing. I think that's fair to say.
Who cares about Melo's vision? The guy passed like fucking 7 times a game.
Yeah, but that passing shit came easier because he's a real hooper. Randall is not.
He did have a better idea of who he was at the elbow.
Randall wasn't a skilled scorer. He wasn't a pure scorer. He was a dominant big man. But I think, because we always say it was playoffs, I think we should appreciate, like, this stretch has shown it. Like, he has been awesome. Like, it's not nothing that you can just be like 24, 10, and 5, and it's like, yeah, did he really play that well?
Also, like, not the East is just way better now. Like it's a way better conference. So
there's no Roy Hibbert, so that's the only thing.
God, fuck that guy. But like honestly, I think that's always a thing where people are like, oh, well, the Knicks in 2012-13, they won 54 games. And it's like, yeah, look, they did. And that was a fun season. They were awesome. They were a really fun team. They were probably a little bit ahead of their time in terms of like just their willingness to launch threes.
They went 3-1 against the Heat, which is not nothing. Which we haven't done that against the Celtics, for example, right? So
well, we did that last year.
No, I mean right now we're not doing that.
Oh, yeah. Yes. But like they were like that conference was just not even like this East is so much better. It's way better. Like, it's fun to shit on Cleveland, and we do own Cleveland. Like, it's just the Knicks are a terrible matchup for them. It's an awful matchup for them. But Cleveland's not a bad team. They're a good team. They're a good team. Obviously, Boston is awesome. Unfortunately, very, very sad to say, but they're awesome. Milwaukee is Milwaukee. Like, you have all these teams that are just really good in the East. And the Knicks in that 2012-13 season, they were the number 2 seed. Like the only team,
there was
Miami, like Indiana, and I don't even know who else, like Chicago
wasn't good, right?
They were good, but they were beat the fuck up, right? Like Derrick Rose wasn't even healthy that year.
Was their coach playing too many minutes?
Perhaps, maybe they did have a great coach who had instilled a great culture in them. No, but like they weren't a particularly good team. I believe the Nets were the 4th.
Were they Darren Williams?
Yeah,
I think the Bulls played the. No, isn't that the year where?
Yes,
that's the Bulls played the Nets and they had no one, and the Bulls still won, like in 7 games.
Yes.
To your point, back against the wall, Thibs got it done, right?
Yeah, Henny probably sacrificed the last 3 healthy seasons Joakim Noah had in his body. No, look, I want to actually be serious about this because I saw a lot of people have some takes about Thibs playing guys too many minutes after Brunson got hurt, and I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna plant my flag on this. I think the entire conversation about Thibs playing guys too many minutes and getting them hurt and all this shit is fucking stupid. I think it's dumb, and I think people go way over the top trying to blame him for stuff that you cannot prove. We're not fucking doctors. None of us are fucking doctors. None of us have fucking access to the Knicks.
You look like a doctor, Shwin.
No, I don't. I'm just because I'm Indian doesn't make me a doctor. But like, none of us have fucking access to the medical information that the Knicks and Thibs and whoever, and very specifically the medical staff has to all of these players. We don't know. We have no fucking idea. So when people start blaming Thibs for, oh, this guy got hurt, that guy, I think it's absolute bullshit. I really do. I think it's absolute bullshit. And I'll consistently defend him on it. Do I think that it's insane when he plays guys like, the Deuce rotation in the last game, which was just play the rest of the game, when he plays guys 18 minutes straight and all. Yeah, I think some of that is fucking insane. I've said that multiple times, and I don't love it. I don't like. I don't. I've criticized him for it, but I think there's to be critical of. Hey, it would be good to maybe take this guy out for more than a couple minutes. Like Josh Hart been playing 45 minutes for the last month. Like, yeah, I can be critical of that. I don't know. I don't think we have the necessary information to immediately jump from, I don't understand this lengthy rotation and it concerns me because I don't like guys playing a lot of minutes straight in a row without any break, to this is why everybody gets hurt under Thibs. And honestly, if we're going to be fucking serious, if we're going to be real fucking serious about this, OG Anunoby's elbow, whatever the fuck is going on, that happened because Thibs played him a lot of minutes? No.
Yeah, Randall's was a complete...
Randall's, that could have happened at any point in any game, regardless of how many minutes he's played. Has absolutely nothing to do with resting or not resting or whatever. Like, the guy went up for...
I think really the only ones you could kind of argue were overuse, and I think there's a big backlash when DiVincenzo got hurt, was Hartenstein and DiVincenzo, right? I think...
Well, no, even the DiVincenzo one, we don't have the information for that. Like, yes.
Yeah, but it's fair to be concerned. I don't think you can say it with fact. I agree with you. You can't just say with fact, oh yeah, that caused it. It's fair to be a little concerned.
You can be concerned. You can even be like, hey, it would have been nice to get him out of the fucking game for a little bit more because look, it was a hamstring issue, which is something that often pops up when fatigue hits, right? Which we know that DiVincenzo had played a shit ton of minutes. Of course, you can be critical of that. Or not critical of it, but you can at least raise the concern, right? Hey, was this about that? And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Who cares? Like, who knows at this point? But we don't know the full breadth of what goes on with the team in terms of what he's asking of players. And we know this, Josh Hart has spoken to this. They don't practice very much. He just give guys days off in between games because he's like, oh, they're playing a lot. They don't need to practice. That helps.
Because we're talking about practice, right? Not a game.
Yeah.
Not a game. Just practice.
Correct. Yeah. And I don't know. I just have a really big issue with jumping from this. Oh, the Knicks are dealing with injuries to this is all because of Thibs. And I don't know. Look, I've been critical of him too at various points for overplaying guys and whatever. And I do think some of his shit is insane. But I also feel like it's a lot of it, how he gets players to 43 minutes. I might disagree with, but I don't think it's that different from a lot of coaches in the league when they're shorthanded. And I mean, if you look at the minute, when guys are healthy, when he has a full rotation, if you look at the actual minutes per game guys are playing, it's not that out of line with shit you see from plenty of other coaches around the league who don't get tagged with this label. So I don't know. I don't want to
the average.
I just think he deserves. I think Knicks fans need to chill the fuck out with that specific criticism, or at least be more specific with the criticism. I get the criticism of hey, you don't need to play guys for entire halves or for fucking 18 minutes straight or what. I get that criticism, but to go from there to Thibs doing this leads to guys getting hurt and all these injuries the Knicks are dealing with are a result of that. So it's a bridge too far for me. A couple of bridges too far.
Mikal Bridges too far. I think for us, I don't think we've really harped on his minutes too much. On this
because I consistently think it's stupid. None of us are fucking doctors, and even if we were, we don't have access to the fucking full medical information that the Knicks are operating under.
Yeah, I think the frustrations we've had have been kind of spacing and those kind of things that some of his lineups. But getting back to the minutes, I think the averages, to your point, the average minutes aren't that crazy, right? Brunson and Randall aren't leading the league in minutes. I think it is the extremes, right? It's how often will a coach play a guy 48 minutes, right, or 47 minutes?
Mm.
Even if the third option is fucking Alonzo Trier or something, right? In that situation, these swings and the extremes, and I think it's a good question, a good medical question that I have no ability to answer. Is wear and tear the bigger factor, or is it more playing 20 minutes straight, right? What is more likely to cause an injury, or what is more strongly associated, or is there a difference? I don't know. But I think that he has been smarter too. He just benched. We benched Brunson on the second game of back-to-back, right?
I mean, look, and this is the other part. Yeah, we did. I don't think that is a Thibs thing. That's a medical staff thing, and that's the other part of this where it's you can't blame Thibs as some he's not the one making guys available or not available to play. It's not his call. It's on the medical staff. And I assume the medical staff is filled with people who presumably are licensed medical professionals. And I assume they're licensed medical professionals because they are able to correctly diagnose and anticipate and plan for things. And I further assume that when they do this, they're making these judgment calls based on actual information. And they're doing these things to protect, I'm assuming they're making decisions based on the ability to maintain the long-term health of players for the full season. So to me, this is not a Thibs thing. at the end of the day, it is more of a medical staff thing. And if the medical staff is clearing players to play, then that's what it is. And to your point about Thibs, like, it's very obvious Hartenstein is on some type of minutes limit right now. It's very, very clear. And he's maintained it. So obviously, if you tell him, hey, this guy's on a minutes limit, he is capable of managing that.
Adhering to that. Yeah, and again, it speaks to the alignment. I am curious to your thoughts on this. Specifically with regards to this issue, our friends over at Knicks Film School had a discussion, and I think one interesting part was that John Macri said basically this is part and parcel of who Thibs is. You can't pick the parts you want and get rid of the. And I thought that was a little bit. I don't completely agree with that because I do think all coaches evolve. And I think Thibs has evolved in his time here, even with respect to this issue with regards to minutes and stints. Not perfect yet, but I'm curious. Like, it's been 4 years now, which for the Knicks is like that's like having a president for 4 terms, right? Relative to how long they usually last. How do you think Thibs has evolved, if he has, and do you necessarily think that this is kind of who he is, or do you think you'll continue to see growth in those kind of things?
In terms of what?
I think in general, I think specifically. John was talking about if you're Thibs is going to try to win every single game and play it like it's Game 7 in the finals, and that's just who he is. And if you don't like that, then you have to fire him. And I thought that was a little bit too much. It's the idea that can Thibs adapt in certain ways, right, while still maintaining his core identity. I think he has, but I think in general, like this was just something that reminded me of that. But in general, my question is, it's been 4 years, long time. How have you seen Thibs change? Over the last 4 years as the Knicks coach?
I mean, just look at the Knicks shot distribution. Like, that will tell you everything you need to know about how he's evolved. Like, yeah, his core identity might be, slow, grinded out basketball, half court game, whatever. And as much as he wants to talk about like, oh, I want us to get out and push the pace and all that, like he doesn't want them to do that. He wants the Knicks to play a half court game. That's fine. It's what he wants. It's what he does. It's what he thinks they should do. It's what it is. That's what he believes. But within that, the Knicks shot chart is pristine. It's probably among the best in the league in terms of Morey ball distribution, shots at the rim, and 3-point attempts. It speaks to that. You look at a guy like Emmanuel Quickly he had as a rookie, going back to Quickly's even rookie year, and this is something that was noticeable at the time, but like he even said it, like he said that like they have like a 4-point line at Terrytown, and he was like Quickly shoots that at a high clip, so I'm okay with him shooting super deep threes, right? And look, that's something that Quickly, I don't want to say cut out of his game entirely, but he definitely did cut down on how many of those like 30-foot threes he was taking, but that is more of an understanding of Quickly probably understanding like, look, I shoot better from 26 feet than I do from 31 feet, right? So let me take shots that are a little bit closer from 3. But Thibs was okay with him taking those type of deep threes, and he's been okay with Dante taking some of those super deep threes. So I would say that like, while I would imagine that when every time that Quickly or Dante takes some deep ass 3, a little piece of him inside dies. I would also believe that he understands that those shots are actually okay. And if they're open, they're actually good shots for those dudes. Maybe not the best shot. Maybe they could be better, but they're not bad shots. And there are things about him that will never change. We know that. Like, we know that at his core, he will never truly feel comfortable playing small, right? He will always want to have somebody that he perceives as a legitimate rim protector, whatever, anchor big in a lineup. He will always believe that. That's just what he is at his core. But I think he has adapted in a lot of ways. I think that, even like Hart talked about this, where it's like, I mean, this is a fact where he gives players like days off. Like they're not practicing as much. that to me shows like a clear ability and willingness to adapt to kind of the modern demands of what you're asking of players in this league, and shows kind of how he has changed over the years. Are there things that piss me off about him? Sure, absolutely. I am there. I mean, even in this Cleveland game to start, I'm like, are we fucking serious? Like we had a lineup of just like, it was literally like, it's like Deuce, Dante, Josh Hart, Precious, Jericho Sims, or Hartenstein. It's like, what the fuck is the spacing of that lineup? Yes, of course, that is like, I'm always confused by his like kind of steadfast focus on. I'm not like winning the possession battle, rebounds, all that stuff. Like I think that can be his blind spot. That's, or not his blind spot, but that is like his philosophical steadfastness in betting on winning the possession battle, rebounding battle, all that stuff. I think can be a detriment at times. But has he adapted to the league and kind of everything? Like, yeah, absolutely, he has. You can't be a coach for as long as he's been a head coach in the NBA and a good head coach and not have adapted. Like, I honestly I don't know what the context was specifically of what John was maybe talking about, but like I would suggest that while there are things that are non-negotiable with Thibs, there's plenty he's done even in his time in New York that show his ability to adapt. Even as far as like, look, does he make lineup changes as fast as we want? No, not all the time. But he has made pretty significant lineup changes at various points in his time in New York. Like last year, we talked about it a bunch, right? They start 10 and 13. And then he's like, okay, no more Derrick Rose, no more Evan Fournier. I will play the young guys a bunch of minutes, maybe not as much as you want, but a bunch of minutes. And that changed the season in many ways. And this year, obviously, change has been forced upon him in some ways with the trades and everything that's happened. But he's rolled with the punches in a decent way. And I think that he has demonstrated. I mean, I thought after the OG trade that they showed a lot of adaptability defensively. So just overall, you know, are there certain things with Thibs that are non-negotiable? For sure. But I don't think it's a universal thing. I think he has shown an ability to adapt, a willingness to adapt in some ways. And that's the reason why he's still an effective coach in 2024.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think it was also like the winning every game thing, right? And playing, doing whatever it takes, no matter what, and not thinking of the long term. That's what he's saying was more integral. But I think that's just, I think to your point, yeah, like eventually you find what works, and there's different strategies that are best different for different teams. I do think when this team gets to full strength, you'll see him adapt a little bit. And it's also that identity he's trying to build, that every game matters, right? Play every game like you're Josh Hart and it's Game 7 in the finals. That identity has been built, and so he can start to do some other things. But I've been really impressed with him, and I do love the identity he's brought. And I do think that he's shown that he can tweak or adjust depending on what the local situation is, without really abandoning who he is. And it's been fun to watch. Look, I mean, we've talked about this, right? Like they will probably need more than he's shown from the ability to adapt, and play different lineups and do different things if they play Boston in a series. And we'll see if he can do that. But this has probably been the best coaching. He's the best coach since Van Gundy, easy, right? Is he better than Van Gundy at this point?
I would
say no, but
I think he's better than Van Gundy.
Ooh. I mean, he never got to the finals, right? I mean, he hasn't had.
Okay. I mean, if we're gonna be, like if we want to have a real conversation about this, I mean, Van Gundy wouldn't have gotten to the finals if injuries didn't force him to play Marcus Camby more either. So if you want to Like that. Look, Thibs and Van Gundy are very similar in a lot of ways, which I don't think people.
Well, they, I mean, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Thibs came up on a staff, so.
Well, yeah. I mean, but I think there are a lot of people that look back at Van Gundy with extremely rose-colored glasses, and I would suggest that everything he did with Marcus Camby in '99 was very fucking weird and not actually beneficial to the Knicks. But injuries forced him into making beneficial choices. So,
right. I mean, but he had a sustained level of success that Thibs is starting to get to, right?
But he inherited that. He inherited it. Like
Thibs inherited Alfred Payton. So
yeah, Thibs inherited garbage. Like he inherited nothing. That there was no foundation. He had to build that from the ground up. And he did. Like you have to give him a ton of credit for that. Like I know that look, at some point building the foundation, you have to leave that in the past and that can't be a reason for keeping a coach. But we also have to accept that like there was no foundation and building one, establishing one, figuring out one. It's not easy. It's not, and the Knicks have found that out for the better part of 20 years. And certainly, I think a lot of coaches would have come in and been like, "Well, what the fuck am I supposed to establish here? You're giving me." I think the only players that stayed on the roster from when he took over, right, like that were already signed, were RJ Barrett, Randall, Mitchell Robinson, and Frank and Knox. Like that was kind of, and I guess Dennis Smith Jr., but like, that's not much of a foundation. It's not much of a core. And for him to come in and establish what he established and kind of pretty quickly diagnose it as like, okay, Randall's basically the guy. It's going to be my guy. A lot of coaches wouldn't have done that, right? Or wouldn't have figured it out. Or if they did figure it out, they would have done it in a dumbass way. Like, look no further than the head coach, the previous permanent head coach, David Fizdale, who wanted Julius to be LeBron James. Like, he's done a really good job, and he's established a lot of good things. And
I mean, look how undisciplined Mitch was even before. Like that season was when it started, right? Because he was obviously a really good player his first 2 years, but that season when Thibs got here is when you really started to see Mitch evolve from not just a freak athlete, but at least on defense, a pretty well-rounded defender who like understood defense. So yeah, I mean, the guys who've been here have developed. Even the guys who maybe are a little bit bitter, I think Grimes developed well, right? So, we talked a lot about Thibs, but we'll see what happens in the playoffs. But so far, I'm not sure there's a lot of coaches who could have pulled off in the last 4 years what he's done here. And that's not to take away credit from Rion, but you need takes a village and all that, right? So
yeah, I mean, you can give credit to multiple people. So even if you want to say Leon deserves more credit, and I do think that like in general, front offices are more critical to the general success of teams than coaches. So Leon deserves more credit to me than Thibs in a lot of ways, but that doesn't really take away at all from what Thibs has done, because I think Thibs has done, are there things he could do better? Sure. But if you zoom out and you look at the broad picture, look at the general landscape of what the Knicks were when he came in and what they are now and all that, I think it's pretty hard to say that he's done anything but an exemplary job. Generally speaking, again, like, yeah, are there things that I wish he had done better? Are there guys I wish he had played more and all there? Yeah, for sure. And we can nitpick and criticize him for all those things. And I still feel like there is a ceiling with Thibs. Like I don't believe that he is a coach who is adaptable enough in the playoffs to ultimately lead you to a title. And that is a ceiling that I think the Knicks will have to grapple with at a certain point in time. But as far as getting from point A, like if point A is a rebuild and point Z is championship, I don't know that there are many coaches that are as good to get you from point A to point V. You know, like I don't know that there are many coaches that are as good at that entire transition. Can he get you to the end goal, the end game? Can he get you to the promised land? I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. I've been saying that all season, and I that is my belief. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong because I think all the stuff that Thibs has done, and you know, again, you look at that game on Sunday night, and like that is a testament to the job Thibs has done. That's a testament to the culture he's built and everything. Um, that's awesome. You would love for that guy to be able to lead this team to a championship. I don't know he can, but it doesn't take away from the job he's done for sure.
Yeah, it's worth noting. You and I just both watched another coach who had had the same shtick, overcome the odds to finally get over the hump and win a championship. So,
well, yeah, I mean it took him some time, but like, yeah, I mean football's I don't know. Tactically with Harbaugh, it's never really been the same thing. He's been as close as you can get to winning everything without actually having won anything. And then obviously he won the national championship this year. So that's a little bit different to me. Thibs has never even gotten to a finals, right? I think the furthest he's ever gone is his Bulls lost in 5 games to Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2011. That's the closest he's gotten, or that's the furthest he's gotten, I guess. So not nearly the same thing, but he's never had like that's the only year I think where you would say, oh, that team had a chance to be a championship team. Like other than that, I mean, in 2011-12, obviously Rose gets hurt, and we don't need to dive into why. Oh, that's on Thibs and whatever. But like once he gets hurt, they don't have a chance to win a championship. And after that, like he never had a shot with any of those Bulls teams. They just were not good enough. So they weren't the Minnesota teams he had. Obviously, never were that caliber. And quite frankly, in New York, until this season, he hasn't had a team that I think any of us would consider viable contenders. Last year, look, I will like I think me and you and others agree that he fucked up in that Heat series, but I don't think that. I mean, like the Knicks were never like. Let's be real; they're never going to beat even if they beat Miami and then they beat Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. They were never beating the fucking Nuggets in the finals, right? That's just never going to happen. But this year, if they are healthy, and presumably they will be healthy come the playoffs, he has a roster that is capable to me of contending, of winning a championship potentially. So he should be held to a higher standard. But we can only judge that when we get to the playoffs. We can't judge that in the regular season.
it's definitely gonna be interesting how and it is a talented roster, but I also say that some of the decisions I don't envy Thibs for having to make. What do you do with Precious Achua when the other two guys come back? When Mitch comes back, right? And Randall's back. What do you do with Deuce? How long do you see if Alec Burks can give you something? And you know how much can you lean into shooting lineups versus defense? I mean, we all think that he undervalues spacing too much, but it's fair to say that there's probably been times when he has tried like Bogey and like is he going to play Bogey Randall next to like Brunson or Debo, right? How much is he going to push and find where that value is depending on the matchup? I think there's a lot because the good thing about having options is you have options, but it also it forces you to make it gives you a larger decision space, which is taxing. And the more decisions you have to make, the harder the sum of them become because it's each of those is some mental currency you're expending. So, but to your point, yeah, I think if they have a disappointing showing, at this point he's been so good this year, especially since with all the injuries, I would think it would be tough to say goodbye. And I don't think they would, even if they have a first round flame out. To be honest, I think they're still they're probably the front office is like, we have to go for it this year, but next year is really the year where it's like hot seat. Where I think this year they're like, we have a chance, and we're gonna judge the roster accordingly, but we're not gonna panic yet if they flame out in the first round even. But I do think that it's going to be an important data point. So we'll see. But there's a lot of, if he gets the decisions right, to your point, I think that really can go all the way. There's a couple of teams who, if the teams play their A+ game, I don't know if the Clippers are really playing their best, it's going to be tough, right? And the same thing with the Celtics. If the Celtics are hitting their threes, even the Knicks at full strength, they're going to struggle. But they're certainly capable of beating any of those teams in a lot of scenarios. So, and that's where coaching makes the difference. And that's where you can be a great coach and maybe not quite have that. Or maybe you're a mediocre regular season coach, but you have a knack for making those. I don't think that really happens much, but if you can think of an example, sure. But I'm very curious to see, with a full deck of cards, what he's going to do.
Yeah, no, definitely very, very interested to see what he can do. And obviously, look, the Knicks need to get healthy. If they're not healthy, then as many culture-inspiring wins as they're capable of, they can't do much without OG and Randall. Those two guys, they absolutely need them to have any chance of winning a series, quite frankly, or even just look. There's a chance that if these guys are out for much longer, they fall into the play-in, and maybe they don't even make the fucking playoffs if those guys are out, right? Like, that's just the reality. They're just not. No team is good enough. Literally, no team in the NBA is good enough to really withstand losing your two best players. Just not a thing.
And I think that would be the only real disaster.
Or two of your best players. I don't want to say your two best players. So two of your three best players. And also Mitchell Robinson, your starting center, who I think people are forgetting that we did lose Mitch much before that.
Yeah, and I mean it's mitigated because Mitch Hartenstein and Precious have looked, especially Hartenstein has looked flat out better than Mitch did, and Mitch was playing well. And Precious also gives you a different skill set, so it's undervalued. But yeah, Hartenstein's on a minutes limit, so of course it matters. I do think it's worth noting, if that did happen, it would suck, because I do think this playoffs, regardless of result, people are like, well, don't have, if they get to the second round, that should be fine. Some people are like, it doesn't matter if you're going to have to play Boston at some point, so why do you care so much about seeding? I do think the more playoff series we get and the more playoff games we can play, to the point we were just making, those are additional data points on Thibs. Those are additional data points on these players. Randall in particular, although if he's not healthy this year, that might not be, that might not be a thing. But I think, and it's additional experience for them. We've seen a lot of these players get experience and get better at things that they weren't able to do before, just from being asked to do it, right? Deuce can now drive a little bit from being asked to run point. Dante has turned from a catch and shoot guy mostly to a guy who's basically playing like prime JJ Redick on offense. You're giving more offensive freedom to Hartenstein with some of his cuts. So I think that experience of being in the playoffs and those data points that the front office will have are pretty important going into the summer, and it'd be unfortunate if they don't get them because of the injuries.
Yeah. It would be very unfortunate if the Knicks don't get a chance to kind of show their full worth. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, I mean, look, all indications are Brunson maybe will miss tonight's game against Atlanta, but shouldn't miss much more time any time after that, really.
Do you think they should still win
if he misses the game?
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe they should win, but look, if Brunson is out, you're out Brunson, you're out Randall, you're out OG. I don't really know what. I mean, Josh Hart had a quote a few days ago, last week maybe, where he basically was like, look, you're out, you're fucking four guys. Any team is going to struggle in this scenario. It's the reality. We can, and this is I'll criticize Thibs at times for not leaning into lineups with better spacing or whatever. But like, end of the day, no lineup he can throw out there is well balanced. It's all very, very situational and contingent on what the opponent has out there. But like, there's no lineup that you're like, oh wow, this is a perfectly balanced two-way lineup. It's just nothing
As all
there.
things should be, right?
Yeah, as all things should be. But like, there, it's just not available to him. So I take issue with when people are like, oh my god, like he's doing an awful job. Why? It's like, oh, how could he start Precious and this lineup has no
Well, I do
spacing.
hope the Burke stuff ends,
but even with the Burke stuff, like he kind of has to play Burks a little bit right now. Like if he doesn't play Burks, then it becomes the rotation it was against Cleveland, especially when Brunson's out, where it's basically 7 guys. It's just you can't sustain that for a full season. So he has to play Burks a little
right? I
bit.
mean, I think there were games where he played Burks more than Deuce, right? Where that's where people were frustrated. I wanted to see if I think it was fair to give Burks a few games there, but at this point, you hope that it's just in general he will choose Deuce as much as possible over Burks.
I mean, yeah, Deuce has been better than Burks. He should get more minutes than Burks. And he was trending that way anyway. Like he was starting to get more minutes than Burks. Even before this last game against Cleveland with Brunson out, like he played more than Burks the previous game. And then, Thibs had a funny comment where he was like, oh, like, I think I should have probably played Burks more looking at his plus minus or whatever, which I don't know, maybe that like I didn't actually hear him say it or watch the press conference. I feel like that might have been some kind of like weird shot at people who are like talking about plus minus a lot or net rating. Personally, I haven't talked about net rating at all on the team this year because I like, especially since OG went down, I don't know how much value the Knicks individual players on offs and net ratings and all that stuff matters. The team is just scrabbling and scrapping and fighting. So it's what it is. They're shorthanded. So I don't know how much value you can take from that. But like he said that, but then none of his actions line up with wanting to play Burks more, right? Like he had played him less in that game than Deuce or Boyan, I believe. And obviously in this last game, he played Burks the least. He played less than Jericho Sims. He played less than Precious. He played less than Deuce, obviously, Boyan, everybody. So, for whatever that statement was, he clearly, his actions don't show that he necessarily believes any of that.
Yeah, I mean, but you have to understand, his life is this game of inches, like football.
Yes,
claw with your fingernails for that inch. I think I will be annoyed if the Knicks lose and people are like, "This is why we should have gotten DeJounte Murray." I think it's worth noting that midseason trades usually don't work. First of all, I think the Bogdanovich part of it has been a success. He had another good game.
Yeah, he's
what
good.
he is on defense. I think he's been good. And I think we really could have used a shooter like that at times last year. Will Thibs want to play a guy who's 0 on defense? We'll see. But I thought, someone tweeted yesterday, like, oh yeah, it's surprising that Oklahoma City thought that washed Gordon Hayward is the guy that was going to get him over the top. And I was like, that's kind of the point, though, right? Is that any move you make at the trade deadline, for the most part, at best, it is a solid addition, right? Or another tool in your tool belt. But it's never like a massive needle mover. And on the flip side, yeah, like often, like I would imagine most of them just don't work because you're integrating a guy who hasn't been there before, even if it is someone like Burks who has familiarity with Thibs, integrating a guy with new teammates. They're available for a reason, right? And I mean, and yeah, like I mean, even when the Knicks traded Marcus Morris, remember how horrible that was for the Clippers? He went from shooting like 50% from 3 to like, what was it, 20% or something?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he stopped bouncing balls off dudes' heads and stuff. So that took that energy away from him. But I think it's worth noting that every team I think struggles with midseason acquisitions, and most of them don't really work out the way you expect.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Speaking of midseason trades, I did want to ask you about this. I was thinking about this yesterday. I saw RJ has played very well for the Sixers, the Raptors. He has been more efficient. than he really has ever been in New York. It seems to be benefiting from them playing a more up-tempo, open court, transition focused offense. But I don't think anybody would say the Raptors are necessarily good. Sorry, they've been playing better. They've been on a better run. Some of that is who they've been playing, but they have been playing better. But I was thinking about this, guys like him who play better, and it's a situation where there's less pressure on you to perform because, I think you would agree with this, right? That like the Raptors pretty clearly are not trying to compete or contend at the moment. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about this because I was thinking about Lauri Markkanen, who similarly not an in-season trade, but was traded from Cleveland to Utah, and Utah very obviously is rebuilding. They're not focused on contending at the moment. And he's somebody whose efficiency and numbers and usage and all that stuff skyrocketed when he got to Utah. How do you personally try to parse, like, what does it mean to you when a guy goes from whatever situation they're in to one that is clearly not focused on winning, but their numbers and their production individually scale up, even if the team itself maybe doesn't benefit or not benefit from it. That's the wrong way to put it. But like the team itself is not in a position to contend or compete or do anything really meaningful and is still very much focused on rebuilding. I guess, like, how do you feel about, I mean, people do this all the time. I do it. I'm sure you've done it. But like, you go, oh, empty numbers, right? Like, how do you kind of try to parse the difference between those things?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think on-off can be pretty useful. Even if players Wemby, for example, has a -5 net rating, but with him off, they're -10.
And
So even on a bad team,
he's incredible.
yeah, I think he is going to be really good. So he already is. By the way,
Wow,
would you say he's a good defender?
That's a bold statement.
Would you say he's a good defender? Because he is European.
Wemby?
I don't know. Yeah, but Gilbert Arenas
No,
said
he's soft.
the Euros don't play any defense. So
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, he's not a good defender.
So if you look at RJ's on-off with Toronto, if I do it only for stats in games he played, they are slightly better. They're about the same, right? So would I consider it empty stats? No. I will say his opponent three-point luck has been worse when he's on the floor. So I think sort of positive. I think the things I would look at is where are one, if he's efficient and putting up numbers, I don't really think you can call that empty stats unless the offense is worse, right? If you're playing Luka ball, fine, you're efficient and putting up stats. But if you're on a bad team, it probably means that it's coming at the expense. That's not really happening with RJ. If you watch the team play, what I think a lot of people are like, you just needed to give him the chance to like create on his own. If you watch where the shots are coming from and where he always had success in New York, it is not get in the middle of the floor, clear out. It is pick and roll. And it's a lot of these handoffs and actions where he gets the ball on the move and gets downhill. One thing I'll note is that in New York, these are the percentage of his two-pointers that were assisted over his career. As a rookie, 35%, 34% his second year, 40% his third year, 42% his fourth year. And then in New York, this year it had increased to 54%. Not coincidentally, as much as he kind of struggled at times in this season with the Knicks, it was still his highest true shooting. And now that number has gone up to 67% of his twos being assisted. Now, keep in mind, even a two where RJ comes and gets on like a pistol action, if he gets the ball, takes two dribbles, does a Euro step, oftentimes like the assist things can be a joke. But I do think it tells you that he's probably getting to score more. He's getting higher usage, but he's getting it in a way that's better for him. I do think, the 3-point shooting has come down, but it's not, it's still at 42% in Toronto. I think that'll probably come down closer to 36, 37. But he's playing in a little bit more of a ball movement oriented offense. And I think so to answer your question, I think because they don't have aspirations of winning, there is no star that they have to feed, and because of that, RJ, I think RJ is always going to struggle in an offense that has some level of heliocentricity, right? So if there is a guy that he has to play off of, I think that can be difficult. And I think he has been better when he doesn't play with Scotty. But what he's great is an offense that's wide open, so a little bit like that, and where he can kind of get the ball on the move and focus on just getting to the rim. When he has to create when he either has to be the guy who creates or has to play off the guy, that's when. But get out in transition, and because they don't really care about winning, they play lineups that are conducive to that. They don't play much defense, but in terms of offense, that is real growth. How can that scale up to a winning team? I think you just have to really be mindful that when he plays, and maybe it's fewer minutes if you play him next to whatever star Toronto ends up getting. You want to get him the ball on the move and get him some amount of easy catch and shoot shots. If he does that, he's a pretty solid player. I don't think he can. It's out of the question. He can be something like Wiggins. I do think 25 and all that maybe won't happen as often. And the last thing I'll say is this: I haven't looked at their numbers together, but I would imagine playing with Quickly is good for that, because Quickly is a guy that can allow Barrett to play off ball and get the ball in interesting situations, but also kind of play off it and facilitate. So I think I think it's encouraging what RJ is doing, and I think he's in a good situation for what he's good at. I'll ask you this: do you think you're seeing things he's doing that you weren't seeing in New York?
I mean, he's passing more. He's making better decisions when he gets into the paint, which was always. I mean, we talked about this forever. That was really my main frustration. I always thought that was the main reason that he did have issues with inefficiency, or his efficiency rather, in New York versus, when it's that was the main reason I felt that he was inefficient during his time in New York. Whereas with Toronto, he seems to be making a lot stronger decisions. So yeah, and for whatever it's worth, both of them, their on-offs are better when they play with each other. They have a positive on-off together versus when they're separated in Toronto. But that's Quickly on RJ, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, just watching him, I feel like he's making better decisions. I don't know. I genuinely, I'm being dead fucking serious about this, because I don't think the Raptors have particularly great spacing. He's shooting fucking 60. He's got a 2-point percentage of 60.9%, which is his best in New York was last season at 49.5. It's a massive jump.
It must be close to 70 at the rim, right?
Let me see. He is at 73.3 at the rim in Toronto.
Like Mitchell Robinson
and that is, he's getting more shots at the rim than he ever did in New York, ever in his career. His highest,
a lot more of them are assisted, right? To the earlier point, I think they play a little more up tempo, and they can get him the ball cutting and off handoffs and on the move, right? So.
Well, they're definitely a higher assist team than the Knicks are. The Knicks are obviously very, very half court oriented, grinded out type of thing. And while I think it's fair to wonder, I still feel like RJ's lack of any type of mid-range game and touch outside of, his lack of touch in general is an issue that will always hold him back from being a true elite offensive player. It does speak to a level of hey, look, we just sung Thibs' praises, so I don't think it's out of bounds to be a little bit critical of him, but I think a lot of his decision-making issues and finishing issues and lack of efficiency, all that stuff probably does have to do with kind of how we play stylistically and the kind of just our general style of play that Thibs has kind of instilled in the team. And so I think it is fair to wonder, like, can we, like, not, I don't, I guess the best way to put it is like, this is just something that I think should be a learning lesson for all of us, myself included. But like, when you're talking about acquiring players and all that type of stuff, I think it's very, very important to consider like how we play and how a player's skill set slots into that. And I think it's very obvious that, look, I'll be flat out honest. Like, I think it's pretty clear that he's competing at a much higher level in Toronto than he was his last however long in New York, at least this season. You can see it in particular on defense. But like, again, I just think it's worth noting, like, hey, look, like maybe there are guys who will play well in the type of overall kind of how we play, our style of play, and there are players that don't. And RJ seems to be a pretty clear example of somebody who needed to leave and get to a team that played more up tempo, and got out and ran more and had more ball and player movement. He's very, very obviously benefited from that as well. You're talking about how much he's being assisted. Well, the Knicks in general are a low assist team, and they've been a low assist team the entire time that Thibs has been the head coach. That's just not a thing that is super important to him. He cares more about not turning the ball over than being a high assist pass team, whatever. And RJ, clearly to me anyway, probably needed to be in a situation that was different than that. And to his credit, he's averaging a career high in terms of assists per 100 possessions. So his assist rate is higher than it's ever been. He's averaging 5.7 in Toronto. His career high in New York for any full season was 4.3. He did that his second and third seasons. So pretty significant jump. His turnover rate has stayed level. So no big jump there. That's impressive. And that's good for him. And that fundamentally makes him a better player. He's also a 62 true shooting in fucking Toronto, which is insane to think about. But like,
you can also say, I mean, on that previous point, though, I will say, like, the Raptors have the luxury to like center more things around RJ, right? The thing is, the Knicks are playing a great team, and every possession counts, and they can't just spam RJ dribble handoffs, right? They can't just spam RJ pick and rolls because the teams will start going drop, right? And they don't push as much in transition. If you're Darko, you can say we need to find out what it is. So let's go nuts, and he's doing well in those.
Oh, wouldn't you say the Knicks had that opportunity when Thibs first came in?
Yeah, but was he this good at that point?
Right, but they never. They never. Yeah. I mean, they never really lean into it to the like. I'm not one of these people that is like, oh my god, the Knicks. He was just standing in the corner the whole time. Like, I think that's bullshit. I think it's ridiculous to think that like you can have a 27 usage where all you do is stand in the corner. That's obviously nonsense. They ran sets for him. They ran plays for him for sure, but it was obvious that Randall was the guy that Thibs felt strongest about as centering an offense, a team around. They never gave RJ that role of importance. And I don't know that Toronto necessarily is either, because Scotty Barnes is very obviously their main guy. Barnes is obviously out right now. Fractured his hand. I don't know how long he's supposed to be out for, but might be. It feels like that could just be a season-ending injury. Anyway, I don't know that like they're doing that either, but they're focusing on him more. They're prioritizing him more, and again, like because they play more of tempo, because it's a more of a free-flowing offense. I think he just generally gets more touches. He's more involved as a result. And maybe because he's more involved and because there are more touches to go around, that's why he's more comfortable giving the ball up at times and passing it and all that type of shit.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe that was just never going to work with Thibs. I do think it's fair to say they could have explored it more. And it's fair to say, like, maybe the best stretch he had was that same best stretch that Quickly had that second year, where that was the most pissed we've probably ever been at Thibs. But, you know, RJ, I think, had a couple of 40-point games. Like, that's when he really started to emerge. And they did have more freedom, right? Because, you know, especially when Randall got benched, the young guys got to cook a little bit more, and not cook in the sense of ISO, but able to tailor the offense a little bit more to him. The question I think we'd both ask is, if your offense is tailored to RJ Barrett, can you win a championship?
I don't personally think so, but that's also like, I mean, that the bar that we're talking about now is like, that's
it. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, how much you can, what I think you can do is you can tailor it more than the Knicks did, especially if you play him next. Quickly is probably not the guy, but if you play him next to a guy who can play with and without another guy, then, you know, you can, maybe he's not going to average as many points as he does here, but he can average that 62 true shooting may stay there because the shot diet stays the same. I do think that he's also shooting 42% from three in Toronto. I don't think that'll necessarily last. But I mean, I'll throw this. I mean, do you think it's unfair to feel? I mean, Wiggins has been awful this year, but that kind of trajectory, I think it's easy to be a lot more confident in that right now than maybe, you know, at some of his low points on the Knicks.
I would agree. Like, I mean, like, he hasn't really had low points in Toronto, to be quite honest. Like, I mean, honestly, the most impressive part of this 62 true shooting he's putting up is this. He's shooting 59% from the fucking free throw line in Toronto. He's shooting terribly from the free throw line. So he's just been like an efficiency monster there. He's really not had low points from the field. He's been an efficient scorer all the way through. And, you know, we can sit here and try and figure out what the fuck happened with him in New York at various points. But, like, the reality is it didn't happen for him in New York. It just didn't. And I think we both felt this way when the trade went down. And I stand by this. Like, I don't feel any regret on giving up on RJ, so to speak, because it just, the best version of him, the version that was going to be successful, optimized, maximized, however you want to phrase it, just wasn't going to happen for him in New York. He needed to go somewhere else. He needed to find a new situation. That's why Quickly is a little bit different to me, because Quickly, for whatever it's worth, seems to be a bit more, he's more adaptable, right? He is effective in Toronto, and he was obviously very, very effective in New York. And
I will say he's no longer a plus-minus god in Toronto. It's actually quite the opposite. So
no, he'll be fine. That's very, very.
The shooting numbers have come back up. Like, he was shooting terribly from
it's all just based on that first stretch of games. He's going to be fine.
No, but, like, even the defensive, this is the first time the defensive advanced stats have, like, not really loved him in his career, because I think he's asked to play point of attack more and stuff. But just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't really give a shit about that, to be honest with you. Like, he'll be an on-off god by the end of by next season. It'll be noticeable I'm sure if you split up his first, he's played 26 games now in Toronto. If you split up the first 13 to the second 13, I promise you that is a big difference.
It's definitely true on offense, because, like, he was down to, like, below 50 true shooting. Now he's back up to not his standard, but 55, which means he's been killing it for a few games now. So
yeah, I mean, his 3-point percentage has never, I mean, he's been really hot from three this entire season, which is not surprising to me. I thought that this was going to be a career year for him from three. His 2-point percentage was really awful in Toronto. He's picking it back up. I would not be surprised if he finishes the year closer to 50% overall for the full season. He was at 51% from 2 in New York. He's at 41.5% in Toronto. I expect that to keep climbing. But yeah.
Yeah, and look, it's also trades can be win-win. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Because when we're healthy, trading for OG Anunoby took the Knicks from a solid team, a tough out, to a team that looked like a true contender, a team that lost once in January with OG. And the Raptors, they get to reset and they get to figure out, all right, we have this interesting young player who's really good at the rim, and you can find creative ways to get him the ball. And it looks like his shooting might be better than we thought. And he's engaged on defense. Like where this seems like a good place for him. We found this other guard with an interesting skill set. So we have these two young flyers. We can, we're not trying to win this year or next year. We can take some shots and see if it's going to work out for us. And for the Knicks, it's the value of that for either of those guys. Let's find out and see what they can be in a year or two. Was less than we have a guy that just fits perfectly with two All NBA players, and takes us to another level. So trades can be win-win. I think we've said that a lot in this show, particularly every time people clown the Kings. Which, by the way, that trade the last couple of weeks doesn't look so bad for the Kings. I don't know if
the Kings have been a better fucking team.
Yeah, but also have you seen Halliburton the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, no, he's been terrible. And
Every
I know
time his scans are like, "Oh my god, he has to be hurt," and I'm like,
his hamstring. Well, I mean, look, maybe
sure
don't play 30 fucking minutes in the All-Star game then.
If
trying
Brunson
to desperately win MVP.
Yeah, if Brunson was shooting tour dates, the entire app would be on him, and the disrespect for Kenny Smith and Candace Parker better be the apology better be as loud as the disrespect. But yeah, trades can be win-win, and I think that one was. I still do. I think it was good for Indiana. They couldn't keep Sabonis and Turner. They got an all-star point guard, and Sacramento turned into a contender. And I think look, Keegan was a really nice piece to add next to those two. It allowed Fox to flourish, right? So, but imagine if the Kings saw Fox turn into this great player. They get an All NBA player in Sabonis, and they're just constantly looking over at Indiana. But you had Halliburton, and it wasn't working out. And sometimes there are win-win trades. Not every trade is one team gets fleeced. If that was the case, the NBA would be a lot less interesting. So. And fewer trades would get done.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. All right. I think that's a pretty decent place to end it. Stacy, let people know where they can find you and plug anything that you'd like to plug.
You can find me at Stacy Patton 89.
Oh, before we finish up, sorry. Do you have any thoughts on Shake Milton? Who is officially now signed with the Knicks?
I thought he was a better his shooting numbers were a little concerning. Like low 30s. From 3. From when I've watched him, he seems like a guy who can control the pace, can get to the rim. He has some decent size. I don't think he's a bad defender. He's a guy that's played quality minutes for several years for a good team in Philadelphia. So at the worst, it's a very good depth signing. We had 2 extra. When we had 2 extra spots, I was thinking these are going to be 10-day guys the rest of the year, like Charlie Brown and whatnot. Like, this is a player, whatever his flaws may be, who has played some significant minutes for a playoff contender and is still pretty young. And I think Deuce has been awesome. I don't want him taking minutes from Deuce. Burks has not. And the reality is injuries happen. So for a depth signing, this is pretty good, I think.
Yeah. I think Shake will be decent for the Knicks. I suspect that he will also immediately supplant Alec Burks in the rotation. That's been my take since we were connected with him. Yeah, I just think that he makes sense for this team that seems to need shot creation in general. Obviously, look, Deuce, we talked about Deuce earlier. Like Deuce playing at the level he's played at is very, very encouraging and very good. But we don't know that we can depend on that yet, right? We don't know that that's something that we can hang our hat on every single game. So having another guy that can dribble, that can create out of pick and roll and stuff like that is good.
Well, he can get to the rim better than anyone on the team right now.
Well, he can get better to the rim than he can get to the rim better than fucking Burks, which is the main thing we're talking about.
Well,
here.
Deuce, I would say that's one thing he's probably also better at than Deuce.
Yeah. But we're talking about supplanting Burks, right, in the rotation very specifically for the time being. I think if he's available tonight, it would not surprise me if he is immediately put in to the Burks minutes. I think Thibs is kind of done with Burks. I'll be completely honest. I think that he is. I think he's seen Burks for what he is in 2024, and he is ready to move on. So that wouldn't surprise me. So that's what I think. I think Shake had played his best basketball under Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers, for whatever he's good or bad at as a coach, he's similar in a lot of ways to Thibs. So I do think that Shake will be better for us than he was in Minnesota this year, and very briefly in Detroit as well. So that's not to say like, oh, Shake's going to come in and be fucking awesome. I just think he'll be better than Burks, and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, and I mean, somebody asked this on the strict cord. What's your over/under on the number of times Clyde says "shake it and bake it" during the game?
Yes. Yeah. That will be fun.
Yeah, and it's just another. I don't even know how he was this available because he's like, again, he's a solid player. It's worth noting he shoots 40% from the corner at least, and with Dante and Bogdanovich being good above the break shooters, if you do need him to just space, he's probably fine doing that. I don't know too much about his defense, but it can't be worse than Burks. And I think having a 13th guy is this season has proven the Knicks kind of need that. So, yeah, welcome to New York.
I agree. All right. Anyway, let people know where they can find you and plug anything that you'd like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPatton89, and I'll plug all the great work at Strickland.
I have nothing to plug personally, so I will plug again. Also, echo Stacy sentiments. Plug all the work at the Strickland. Listen to all the various podcasts. Subscribe to the Patreon. That is our show for today. Thank you to our sponsors, BetOnline and Cut. And I will see everybody on Friday.